A man sits in the silence of the night inside a hospital room, sadness filling his eyes as he gazes at his eldest son lying in the bed. He has come to take one last look at him, bidding him farewell with a gentle touch of his hand. His memories take him back to his 15-year marriage, which he thought was going well. He believed he had hit rock bottom in his life, but he didn't realize that his descent hadn't even begun yet and that fate had a much deeper fall in store for him. His tragedy began to worsen with the accumulation of his son's exorbitant hospital bills, which amounted to 20,000,001 per month. Added to this was the settlement for a traffic accident he caused while trying to avoid a drunk woman. Furthermore, he was suffering from professional frustration due to the repeated rejection of his novel manuscripts. The burden was heavier than he and his wife could bear, no matter how patient and strong she was. Their descent into the abyss was swift and sharp, and exhaustion began to gnaw at their souls as they desperately yearned for some peace. In their desperate search for salvation, the man sits with his wife at a table with 2 glasses of iced drink before them. The man hesitates and asks apprehensively if he should drink first. His wife answers with a firm gaze, saying she will follow him in a few moments and reminds him of his promise not to change his mind. He asks her with concern about the fate of their daughter, Yunmin, and she reassures him not to worry, that she will take good care of her. The man reached his hands toward the glass, hesitating, wondering if this was truly the final solution to their tragedy. On that fateful day, the family had decided to end their lives. The man holds the glass with trembling hands and begins to drink. The wife watched her husband expectantly, waiting for him to drink the poisoned glass. But the husband, at the last moment, cried out and lowered the glass from his mouth. Declaring his inability to go through with this decision and that he was sorry, his wife flies into a rage and asks him why he backed out, then tries to force him to drink the glass by force, screaming that he must do it. The man resists her, crying and begging her to stop. The struggle between them intensifies until he screams at the top of his lungs for her to stop, then pushes her hand away forcefully, shattering the glass and its contents. They both collapse to the floor amidst the broken glass, while their daughter lies asleep in an adjacent room, unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. His wife asks him in despair what they are supposed to do now after it took so much for them to make this decision. While he weeps bitterly, apologizing and insisting that he cannot do it, she screams at him, asking if he doesn't realize yet that living like this will only bring them more misery and suffering. The wife collapses in tears, and her husband calls her by her name Ji-young, promising her that he will improve their situation and begging her to give them a chance to try living again. And so on that day, they failed once again to die. In a later scene, amidst a rainy night, while the man is working as a taxi driver, he tells a potential passenger that he has finished his shift, but he is surprised by a strange-looking old man who bursts into the car with a wide, eerie smile. The old man insists on his request and orders him to drive immediately, and the driver sets off in an atmosphere of mystery. As they drove, the man looked at the old man in the mirror, a look filled with suspicion and anxiety. The old man turns to him and says that money, it seems, has ruined everything. The man asked him what he meant by his words. Then the old man adds that life is inherently miserable and advises him not to think about ending his life again because of money. The driver is shocked and suddenly stops the car, flying into a rage and asking him who he is and who gave him the right to interfere in other people's lives. The old man ignores his anger and asks him directly if he needs money. And when he finds the driver doesn't answer, he repeats his question insistently. After a moment of hesitation, the driver admits that he needs money. The old man tells him to turn the car around, announcing with a chilling smile that they are changing their destination to a place that will completely change his life. They arrive at a dilapidated building in a desolate area, and they enter as the old man complains about his knees while climbing the stairs. Doubt begins to creep into the driver's heart, and he thinks that following the stranger was a mistake from the beginning, wondering what he could possibly get from a place like this. Before he can finish his thoughts, the old man tells him they have arrived. They find themselves in front of a large ornate door bearing the name Apollo Savings Bank. The old man told the driver that the money he needed would be taken care of at Apollo Savings Bank. The driver hesitantly tells the old man that he is blacklisted and cannot get a loan, but the old man replies that it doesn't matter as this is no ordinary bank. As soon as he opens the door, the driver finds himself in a corridor lined with several doors. The old man tells him that one of the windows is available for him and wishes him good luck, then suddenly disappears, leaving the driver alone and bewildered. With hesitation and anxiety, the man extends his hand and opens one of the doors in front of him, only to find himself inside a small organized office where a bank employee sits behind his desk and welcomes him to Apollo Savings Bank. The employee named Kim Sang-sang asks him what he needs. The man replies nervously that he wants to get a loan, and the employee asks for his personal identification as a routine procedure. As the employee enters his data into the computer, the man thinks to himself that everything seems strangely real and routine, and he wonders if a bank like this actually exists. After a few moments, the employee, calling him by his full name Park Yun-ho, informs him that he is eligible for a loan of 950 million won. Park Yun-ho's eyes widen in astonishment, and he asks the employee if he heard the number correctly. The employee calmly confirms the amount and asks him if he wants to withdraw the full amount. Park asks hesitantly if he is forced to withdraw the entire sum, and the employee explains that he can withdraw the full amount or a portion of it. Driven by desperation and need, Park shouts enthusiastically that he wants the entire amount. But doubt returns to him, and he asks about collateral for which he has nothing to offer. And the employee smiles and tells him that collateral is not required. The employee hands him the loan papers to sign. Park realizes that the whole thing is suspicious and that something is wrong, but the temptation of the money and solving all his problems overcomes his caution. The employee asks him if he wants to proceed, and Park agrees and signs the papers. After signing, he asks the employee why he was granted this loan despite his poor credit history, which prevents him from getting any loan. The employee is surprised by his question and asks if he came to the bank without prior knowledge of its system, which Park confirms. The employee informs him that his current bank balance is very low, and since he is uninformed, he will begin to explain the bank's operating system to him. The employee begins to explain, stating that Apollo Bank tracks its clients' future balances on an annual basis, and then drops the bombshell. A sum of 1 billion and won will be deposited into Park Yun-ho's account within the year. Park is shocked again and asks in disbelief how this could happen. The employee confirms his statement, and when Park asks him how they know the future, he replies that he cannot reveal the details because it is against the bank's regulations. However, he explains that the bank allows clients to borrow from their confirmed future balances for a 5% upfront interest fee. The employee continues to explain to Park that what he has essentially done is borrow the money he will earn in the future to use it in the present when he needs it most. Park slowly grasps the incredible idea, muttering to himself that he will receive 1 billion and won within a year. His mind starts searching for a possible source for this sudden wealth, wondering if his novel won a competition or perhaps he got a contract from a global production company like Xflix. But he quickly dismisses these thoughts, deciding that the source of the money doesn't matter for now. With this money, he will finally be able to pay his son Soman's hospital bills and future treatment costs, settle the overdue rent and living expenses, and even buy a small apartment of their own. He felt he could finally escape all this misery. After receiving the bank card, he immediately heads to the nearest ATM, his heart pounding, and his heart slowed to a crawl as he stood before message appeared, checking balance after transaction. When the ATM screen displays his balance of nearly 950 million won, a wide, incredulous smile spreads across his face. Park later recounts how his life suddenly changed after receiving this sum. When his wife asked him about its source, he told her about Apollo Savings Bank, and she asked him nothing more. This money was a true miracle for his family. Thanks to it, his son, Soman's surgery, was successful, who was told he wouldn't live long, getting a new lease on life. The family moved into a decent apartment. His wife said in amazement that she couldn't believe something like this had actually happened, and Park paid off all his personal and bank debts, finally shedding the stigma of bad credit. Despite the joy, his wife asks him worriedly if this money is safe, and he reassures her that it's not suspicious money and everything will become clear by the end of the year, telling her that her suffering is over. However, anxiety was creeping into the wife's heart about everything that had happened. Their life continued to improve. They bought a family car and a school bag for their second child. But by mid-September, a strange sense of unease began to creep in. The money the bank had promised would definitely come this year had shown no sign of appearing yet. He tried to reassure himself that it might come tomorrow or in 2 months or even on the last day of the year. Meanwhile, he received a rejection for the synopsis he sent to Xflix, and his only income was a meager amount from selling a short story while his wife continued to work. Park stops writing and wonders in despair how he is supposed to get 1 billion and won by the end of this year. Park remembers how at first he lived every day full of hope. But as time went on, a strange sense of anxiety began to grip him. A few days later, as he was checking his mailbox, he found a letter that filled him with terror and suspicion. The letter was a certificate for a life insurance policy in the name of his 15-year-old son, Park So-min, covering the entire current year. The shocking surprise was that the policy's value in case of accidental death was 1 billion and won. In a state of shock and anger, Park confronts his wife with the certificate, yelling at her and asking when she signed this document and whether she really wanted their son to die. His wife replies that she did it when So-min was in the hospital, and the doctor said there was no hope for his recovery and reminds him that he himself had agreed to it back then, but he had angrily ignored her words, refusing to even consider that his son might die. Park points out that So-min is fine now and goes to school regularly and even takes extra classes. But Park realizes the horrific truth. The amount of the insurance policy matched exactly the 1 billion and won the bank had predicted. His wife refuses to listen to his concerns, calling his words nonsense, and then leaves for work angrily. Park enters a spiral of denial, trying to convince himself that there is another explanation. He clings to the idea that he will win the lottery before the end of the year, and that the prize after taxes will be 1 billion and won. He was sure there was no other explanation. With this faint hope, he heads to a lottery ticket store. There, he is confronted with the reality of the slim chances of winning and realizes the absurdity of linking his son's life to such a thing. He admits to himself that he was desperately trying to think of anything else, but the anxiety and fear that something bad might happen to So-min were consuming him. Later, as he was waiting for his son, So-min called out to him from a distance. So-min apologizes for being late because he was cleaning the classroom. At that moment, a speeding truck suddenly appears. Park screams his son's name, and the truck hits him on the road. In a desperate paternal reaction, he rushes forward and pushes his son out of the truck's path at the last second. He hugs him tightly and asks him eagerly if he is okay, and So-min replies that he wasn't hurt and apologizes for not paying attention. Park yells at his son, saying there's nothing to be sorry for, and asks him again with concern if he's sure he wasn't hurt. So-min confirms that he is completely fine, so his father hugs him tightly, thanking fate for his son's survival, while passers-by gather and one of them asks to call the police to report the accident. Later in his house, Park holds the insurance policy and realizes the horrific truth with absolute clarity. Whether it was a car accident or a rare disease, the fact that the 1 billion and won would come to him this year meant only one thing. His son, So-min's life was in danger. In a fit of anger and despair, he tears up the papers. He goes mad thinking that he was going to use his son's life for money, and that he celebrated with his family by buying a car and a house with that cursed money. In a moment of desperation, he remembers Apollo Savings Bank and realizes that if he could find out who deposited the money, he would know where this amount would come from in the future. He tries to call the bank but receives a message that the number does not exist. He screams in frustration at this dead end. He remembers how the employee told him that he couldn't give him any details because it was against the rules. Determined to uncover the truth, he decides to return to the bank's headquarters to meet with the higher-ups. He thinks that if he tells them his son is sick, they might listen to him. He had to be sure. Even if this money was his son's life insurance, he climbs the stairs and opens the door, only to face a major shock. The bank had completely disappeared, leaving behind an empty room. He returns home and tells his wife Ji-yeon that the bank has vanished without a trace. Despair overcomes him, and he realizes he must find that mysterious old man who knows everything, and he deeply regrets not getting his contact information. He breaks down crying in front of his wife, screaming that their son, So-hun, is going to die. His wife slaps him and screams at him to get a grip, reminding him that in times like these, he must be the strong one because he is the head of this family. Park's gaze steadies, realizing his responsibilities. In another scene, someone visits, and the man asks him if he is Kim Ji-yeon's husband. Park confirms to the man that he is Kim Ji-yeon's husband, and the man who appears to be the boss asks him if the insurance lady was the one who gave him his business card. After Park confirms this, the boss shows interest, commenting that his wife seems demure but has the audacity to send her husband to him. The boss asks Park if he knows where he is, and he replies in the affirmative, then tells him in despair that he needs 1 billion and won. The boss scoffs at him and asks if he thinks he can repay that amount. Park promises him that he will pay it back in monthly installments, and the boss scoffs even more, asking if he thinks 1 billion and won is an amount that can be easily managed monthly. After a moment of silence, the boss agrees to give him the loan, but warns him that he knows what it entails, and Park confirms that he is ready for the consequences. The boss hands him a contract for 1,000,000,001 and warns him that the interest will be a heavy burden, but Park promises that he will repay the amount no matter what it takes. Thus, Park finds himself having borrowed 1,000,000,001 from a loan shark. He now had to pay a monthly interest of 25,000,001, but he had no other choice, for he had chosen what was more precious than money. Park remembers how his wife Ji-yen ordered him to do whatever it takes to find the old man and not to come home until he found him. He goes out searching for him throughout the city and finally finds him in a public park sitting with a group of men. Park approaches him quietly and surprises him, and the old man recognizes him. Park tells him sternly that they need to talk. After Park explains the situation to him, the old man replies coolly, "So that's how it is." Park flies into a rage at his reaction, grabbing him and screaming that his child is about to die because of him. The old man tells him to calm down, saying that Park is lucky he was able to find him. Park's anger intensifies as he tells him about the great trouble he went through to find him. The old man smiles and calls him always hasty, then reveals a crucial piece of information. If he repays the borrowed money early within the specified period, the future event will disappear. Park is shocked and asks if the event will really disappear. The old man scolds him for not reading the terms and conditions carefully, explaining that if he deposits the borrowed amount back into the loan account, the future will change. The old man continues his explanation, clarifying that as soon as the borrowed amount is deposited back into the Apollo bank account, the bank will automatically register it as a loan repayment. This is the bank's rule. If the client makes an early repayment, their future assets disappear. The deal ends once the price for a glimpse into the future is paid. Park asks if this means the 1,000,000,001 he was supposed to receive will also disappear. The old man confirms that the amount will be erased as if it never existed. The old man adds that the real problem is that the client doesn't know the nature of this future money. Could come from a good or bad source. If the money is from a good source, then early repayment is a loss. But if it's from a bad source, it's better to repay early to erase that bad event. The old man applies this directly to Park's situation, telling him that if he repays the 1,000,000,001 now, his son will not die, assuming the money is linked to his death. He then tells him that this is why he is lucky, and the decision is now up to him. At home, his wife Ji-yen discusses it with him firmly, asking if there is any other choice. She tells him the only possible plan. He must raise 1,000,001 and deposit it into the account before the end of the year, and thus everything will disappear. The amount they were supposed to receive, Soman's illness, his death, and the insurance money. Park tries to cling to one last hope, wondering if it's possible the money is from another source unrelated to their son. His wife sharply asks him why he is worried then. Park admits to himself that she is right, and the reason for his anxiety is his deep conviction that the money is linked to his son's death. The wife told Park that this money couldn't have come from something good, and if it had reached them, it must have been from Soman's insurance payment. She told him this is where she lost him before and asked him to go there. His wife gives him a business card for a place that looks like a car wash but is actually a loan office. Park asked her if she was asking him to borrow money from there. When Park hesitates because of the high interest rate on the loan, his wife scolds him, asking if the interest is really what's worrying him in such a dire situation. The scene returns to the present with Park thinking that his wife was right. Despite the heavy burden of interest that will weigh him down, at least his child will live. He chose stability over worry. Park returns home with the money, and his wife asks him if he borrowed it. Park silently handed her the loan approval contract. He is surprised to find her and the children with packed luggage. He asks her where she is going, and she replies that she is going to Gangnam. When he asks her why she is going to her father's house, she replies with another question, surprised that he doesn't even know that today is his mother-in-law's birthday. When Ji-yeon opens the door to leave with the children, she tells them they have to go greet their grandfather. Her son, Soman, asks her about his father, and she replies that he will join them next time. Their younger daughter, Sun Min, starts to cry, refusing to go without him and wanting to play with him. Park comforts her and promises that he will take the train to join them the next day, where they can all see the sea and play with a ball together. So the little girl calms down and agrees. Park turns to his older son, Soman, and advises him to be mature, to take his medicine regularly, and to take care of his little sister after saying goodbye to his children. As his wife leaves, she tells him that the money will arrive this week. Park reassured his wife, saying there was no need to worry. The amount would arrive this week, and he would pay it back immediately without delay. His wife asks him to repay the loan immediately and then call her to let her know. Park called out to her, then hesitated, saying, "Nothing." She replied quietly as she walked away, "I'll be back later." Alone in the empty apartment, Park reflects on his fate. Only one day remains. With the 1,000,000,001 he will borrow, he will save his son, but this amount will turn into a backbreaking debt. He calculates in his head that even if he sells the lease on the house and the car, he will still be in debt by about 400,000,001. Despite this, he resolves to protect his family no matter the cost. Believing that this debt is nothing compared to saving his son's life, he sits waiting anxiously, the hours passing slowly, remembering the loan shark's promise that the money would be deposited into his account by 5 o'clock. But 5 o'clock passes, and all he receives is an annoying text message. He screams in anger, wondering why the money hasn't arrived as promised. He wonders if he trusted the loan shark too easily. And at that moment, as his phone rings, he is attacked from behind and brutally choked. As he chokes and tries to resist, he wonders why the loan shark is attacking him. He fights for his life with all his strength, pained by the thought that he will die in this absurd way, and worried about what will happen to his family after him. In his final moments, memories of his words to his wife flash through his mind and their argument over the insurance policy. And then he realizes the complete horrific truth. The 1,000,000,001 that was supposed to come to him at the end of the year wasn't the price of his son's life, but the price of his own life. In a final flash of consciousness, Park remembers the rule of Apollo Bank that the old man had told him about. If the loan is repaid early, the deal ends and the future event disappears. He realizes that if the 1,000,001 is the insurance payout for his own death, then his son, Soman's death, will not happen. A wave of relief mixed with pain washes over him, and he smiles as he utters his son's name one last time. Suddenly, Park wakes up, gasping in terror. He sees blood on his hands, and when he looks beside him, he finds the loan shark drenched in his own blood, killed with a knife in his chest. In a state of shock, he wonders what happened. Realizing that someone has died in his home, his phone rings and the caller is Soman's mother. He answers in a panic, trying to tell her what happened, but he hears a familiar voice on the other end of the line. He asks in shock, "Is Soman going to die?" Then comes the shocking answer over the phone as part of a news report or a memory. Soman had choked to death on a rice cake his grandmother gave him. The scene shifts to Soman's funeral, where Park stands stunned before his son's memorial altar. Park took a blood-stained emblem from his pocket, staring at it in confusion, not understanding its secret. His wife Ji-yeon collapses to the ground in grief. Park approaches his wife, trying to comfort her, placing his hand gently on her shoulder, but family members surround her to console her, asking Park to stay back while they take care of her. He stands alone in his grief. Park bends down and picks up his wife's phone from the floor, his gaze freezing on the happy family photo on the screen, feeling a pain in his heart. Park sits down and bursts into bitter tears. The silence of the wake is mixed with Park's loud sobs. As he is crying, he notices a notification on his wife's phone, which he is holding. The notification reveals the existence of a multiple profile for Ji-yeon. Curiosity drives him to open the phone. Suddenly, Park freezes in place, his eyes wide as he reads his wife's conversations on her phone, shock written all over his face. He discovers that the profile picture of one of the chat participants belongs to the loan shark Gwang-ho. He is even more shocked as he reads the conversations between his wife and Gwang-ho, which reveal their plot to kill him. The messages confirmed their agreement not to back down and revealed that Ji-yeon was contacting Gwangjo to tell him her husband was at home, paving the way for him to come and kill him. Park's memory replays the text conversations between his wife Ji-yeon and the loan shark Gwangjo, where Ji-yeon confirms their agreement not to back down. And Gwang-ho replies that he will take the 1,000,001 from her husband's insurance, to which she agrees and urges him to hurry. Park stands in shock, unable to comprehend the gravity of what he has seen. The scene shifts to an earlier time where Gwang-ho was lying in bed with Ji-yeon, who was asking him to kill her husband. Gwang-ho shows hesitation, saying their request goes too far and that meeting secretly is enough. But Ji-yeon begins to weave her story, claiming that her husband got strange money from the future, and that this money is linked to the death of their son, Soman. She asked him to give her some money of his own to pay off that cursed debt immediately. Gwang-ho rejects the idea of being her money wallet, but she insists and reveals her true plan. She has purchased a life insurance policy on her husband for 1,000,001,001. She tells him that she read the strange bank's terms, and that early repayment cancels the future event. Therefore, she asked him to lend her the money to pay off the bank's debt. Then they would kill her husband and take the insurance money. Ji-yeon looks at him and calmly asks if he really intends to lend her the money. Gwang-ho scoffs at the plan, calling it insane, and wonders why he should risk everything. So Ji-yeon gives him her final offer. She will be his forever. Gwang-ho replied that no matter how he looked at it, he would be the loser in the end. Ji-yeon retorted, resentful of his loser description, saying he could sleep beside her whenever he wished. There was no escape for him. She continues to persuade him that there will be no annoying debts or a useless husband, adding that it's time to switch. The scene returns to the present at Somin's funeral. Park enters the room and asks Ji-yeon's family to step aside for a moment, indicating that he has something to talk about with Ji-yeon. Park stands sternly before Ji-yeon, who looks at him in fear. At that moment, he throws her phone down beside her, displaying her conversation with Gwang-ho. After connecting all the dots, thanks to the messages he read, Ji-yeon understands that he knows the truth, and she tries to explain what happened, but can find no words to justify her actions. Park explodes in rage and attacks Ji-yeon, choking her while screaming at his wife, accusing her of conspiring with that scoundrel to kill him. Park continues to choke his wife Ji-yeon violently as his words hang like a hammer, repeating the cry, "Die." His eyes were filled with hatred as he accused her of being the one who killed their son, So-min. Ji-yeon struggles desperately, gasping and begging him to stop. Suddenly, men burst into the place and interrupt the scene, forcing Park to stop and look at them in confusion, wondering who they are. One of the men identifies himself as being from the Songbuk police station and shows his official ID issued by the National Police Agency. Then, in a formal tone, the officer informs Park Yoon-ho that he is under emergency arrest on suspicion of murdering a man named Kim Gwang-ho. Park's eyes widen in shock and horror, as does his wife's, who watches the scene with bulging eyes. Park mutters in disbelief, wondering if he is really a murder suspect. The officer explains that they received a report from a witness and asks for his cooperation with the investigation as Park stands speechless. Amidst the funeral hall filled with white wreaths, the officer begins to read him his rights. He tells him he has the right to an attorney, an opportunity to explain his side of the story, and to request a review of his detention order before a court. Another officer steps forward and puts handcuffs around his wrists. As he is being led away, Park gets lost in his thoughts, insisting to himself that he did not kill Gwang-ho. His memory flashes back to that day, and he is overwhelmed by a deep sense of regret, wishing he had died instead of Somin. In a flash, an image from the crime scene appears before him, Gwang-ho's body, and a blood-stained metal emblem lying on the floor. His eyes widen in a sudden realization as he remembered that emblem well. It was the same emblem that was on the badge of the bank employee, Kim Sang-sang. Driven by this shocking discovery, Park makes a desperate decision. He lunges towards a pot of boiling soup and throws it in the faces of the officers who scream in pain. Taking advantage of the chaos, he runs away as the officers scream behind him and order his capture. 1 month after that incident, after Park spent his days drowned in grief and hatred over the loss of Somin, the scene shifts to another location. An old client appears sitting in front of the bank employee Kim Sang-sang. The old man asks the employee if his papers are ready, and the employee replies in the affirmative. The old man expresses his astonishment at the idea of being able to receive money from the future in advance, describing it as unbelievable, then asks when he will know the result. The employee explains that he needs to return to his office to enter the documents and perform the necessary calculations, and that he will be able to contact him the next day. The old man asks him to take care of it, and the employee reassures him and tells him he has an appointment with another client now. The employee, Kim Sang-sang, leaves after giving the old man his business card and steps out into a street drenched in heavy rain. As he walks under his umbrella, he is suddenly attacked by a mysterious person in a hood who grabs him violently by the collar. Kim Sang-sang asks his attacker in terror why he is doing this. The attacker reveals his face, and it turns out to be Park Yoon-ho, who holds up the blood-stained Apollo Bank emblem and asks him sarcastically if he remembers it. The events flash back to the past, where another man wearing glasses appears nervous as he walks down a dark alley. Searching for something in vain, the scene shifts to the moment of the struggle between Park and Gwang-ho, where Kim Sang-sang and another employee appear after Park has lost consciousness, and the other employee stabs Gwang-ho. Gwang-ho was trying to resist them, but his strength was fading quickly. And in an attempt to fend them off, he rips the metal emblem from his suit. Gwang-ho falls to the ground. After they are sure he is eliminated, Kim Sang-sang orders the other man with glasses to withdraw, and they leave the scene. Park is left next to Gwangho's body. He notices something lying on the floor next to Gwangjo's hand amidst a pool of blood. It is the Apollo Bank badge. The man realizes he made a grave mistake by leaving such a clue behind, and he is seized with terror, turning around as he feels something following him. The man rushes back to the building, panting in fear, and quickly climbs the stairs to apartment number 403. After entering the apartment and making sure no one is there, he breathes a sigh of relief. He takes out his phone and tries to call a number saved as Assistant Kim Sang-sang, but the call goes straight to voicemail, and the man curses angrily. The man hears the sound of footsteps in the building's hallway and looks anxiously through the peephole, but he sees no one outside. Suddenly, phone rings, and he jumps. The caller is team leader Park Jang-mong. The man answers the call, and the team leader scolds him for not answering and for wandering around with his location tracker turned off, reminding him of the rules of the RO organization. The man replies with a trembling voice that he has just arrived home. Then, in a voice filled with terror, he tells his leader that the ghost has appeared. The leader asks incredulously, "A ghost?" As he listens in terror, he looks through the peephole again, and the ghost in question appears. Who is the mysterious old man holding the golden Apollo Bank emblem and smiling eerily saying, "Bingo." On the other end of the phone, the man with glasses, Woo Young-wook, mutters the word maestro in terror. The team leader shouts through the phone, but at that moment, something passes through the peephole piercing Woo Young-wook's head. The scene shows Woo Young-wook lying dead on the floor, his eyes open in eternal shock. The leader calls his name, demanding an answer. Meanwhile, the mysterious old man, the maestro, calmly leaves the building humming a tune before letting out a faint, sinister laugh. Elsewhere, Park continues to confront the bank employee Kim Sang-sang, accusing him and his men of killing the loan shark. Sang-sang calmly asks Park to let him go, but Park insists on knowing how the bank can predict people's futures. Sang-sang replies that this is a special system of Apollo Savings Bank. Park's anger flares, and he claims that Sang-sang knew his son was going to die. Sang-sang tries to feign surprise and sorrow upon hearing the news of the son's death. Park is not fooled and presents his theory. The old man lured him to the bank, and then the bank killed his son to get the insurance money, accusing them of meddling with his family's fate. At the mention of the old man, Sang-sang's expression changes. He grabs Park's wrist with surprising force, causing Park to cry out in pain. Sang-sang asks seriously how Park found the bank. Park admits while in pain that an old man got into his taxi and told him about the place. Sang-sung presses further, asking if this old man was carrying a cane with writing on it. Park remembers the image of the old man and his cane in his car. Sang-sung realizes the gravity of the situation and tells Park that he should have taken him earlier. Before Park can understand what he means, Sang-sung attacks him, throws him forcefully to the ground, and pulls out a cloth soaked in a chemical on his face. Park quickly loses consciousness, while Sang-sung reassures him that he will wake up soon. Park tries to resist with all his might, to no avail. Suddenly, truck appears and speeds towards them. The truck crashes, creating a huge mess, leaving behind a cloud of dust and debris amidst the collision. Park slowly regains consciousness and stands in a daze, where he finds Kim Sang-sang dead amidst the wreckage. Park approaches him, but he stands nervously, not knowing how he should act in that situation. Amidst the wreckage of the accident, Park sees in shock the truck driver moving in front of him. The driver headed towards the briefcase that Kim Sang-sang was carrying, then picks it up and heads towards Park with it. The driver, his face covered in blood, warns Park about the Arrow organization, saying they will manipulate him to achieve their goals. Park screams in confusion and terror. The driver gives the briefcase to Park and adds a final astonishing message. If Park meets the leader of Arrow, Park Jang-mong, then his son, So-min, can be saved. Then the driver falls to the ground, dead. Disbelieving what he's hearing, he wonders in a trembling voice if saving So-min is really possible. The scene shifts to Woo Young-wook's apartment, where leader Park Jang-mang is examining a crime scene photo. The photo shows the body of Woo Young-wook, known to them as Jinik. And next to him, the word maestro is written in his blood on the floor as a final message. The leader deduces that Jinik left them a message before he died. He comments that the maestro was killed a long time ago, but has reappeared. In this era, he confirms that their mission is to end the event in this era and that Jinik was assigned to monitor Park Yun-ho, and now a replacement must be found for him. When he examines Jinik's bag, he adds that they have also lost contact with Kim Sang-sang. The leader suspects that the maestro is also behind Sang Sang's disappearance and concludes that if that's the case, they must completely revise their plans. He takes Jinnik's ID card and destroys it, declaring that Jinnik's Amphilo's access card will be destroyed, which will cause the memories of the future to disappear. Meanwhile, Park is panting in the street, clinging to the hope planted by the driver's last words that Somin can be saved. When he spots police cars approaching, he quickly hides in an alley, holding on to the briefcase left for him. After the danger passes, Park enters his hideout, panting from exhaustion and shock, trying to process what just happened. In the dark hideout, painful memories assault Park's mind. Images of his happy family, his wife's betrayal, and his suffering flash before him before he collapses in despair. He quickly gathers his strength, focusing his gaze on the briefcase left for him. Park finds an iron bar and uses it to force the briefcase open. Park is surprised by what he finds inside. He discovers a sophisticated computer and an ID card for Kim Sang Sang, but it bears the name Jaras above his real name. Park is puzzled by this strange name, wondering if Sang Sang was a foreigner. He continues to search the briefcase and finds a loan document in someone else's name, but more importantly, the name of the loan officer, Park Jangmong. He also finds his business card identifying him as a branch manager. At this moment, Park clearly remembers the driver's words that meeting this man is the key to saving his son Somin, and hope ignites within him again. Using the information he found, Kim Sang Sang's phone receives a call from Park Jangmong. When Park answers, Park Jangmong asks him about Kim Sang Sang, and Jangmong replies by asking who the caller is. Park tells him directly that Kim Sang Sang is dead. Jangmong is shocked and asks again who the caller is, and Park replies that he will reveal his identity if he agrees to meet him. Young Mong eagerly asks if the briefcase is in Park's possession, and Park realizes its importance. Young Mong warns him not to tamper with it, saying it's not something people like him can handle. Park breaks down in desperation, insisting that he doesn't care about the briefcase or its contents. All he wants is to save his son. He pleads with him, saying he was told that Jangmong could save him. Upon hearing the word son, Jangmong realizes he is talking to Park Yun-ho. He suddenly tells him he will call him back and ends the call, leaving Park crying in frustration. In his car, Jong Meng thinks about the disaster that has befallen them, losing 2 agents in one day, making this event the worst in history. He blames the return of the maestro whom he thought was dead. He decides he has no choice but to summon them and makes a phone call, announcing that he is choosing the lesser of 2 evils. The scene suddenly jumps through time to April 14, 1865 at Ford's Theater, where the 16th U.S. President Abraham Lincoln was watching a play. Someone appears behind him and points a pistol at his head. In another room, someone watches the scene with anticipation. A blonde man named Psyche and a mysterious woman watched the scene. Suddenly, the woman whispered the word bang, as if she were anticipating the moment the shot was fired.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.